Picture this. It's May 1910. You've got 9 kings, all in their full regalia, riding in the funeral procession for Edward VII of England. The crowds are hushed, dressed in black, but apparently they couldn't help but gasp at the sheer spectacle. It's quite an image.
Oh, absolutely. And Barbara W. Tuchman, in her incredible book, The Guns of August, which won a Pulitzer, by the way, she uses that exact moment to hit you with something profound.
Yeah, that quote is amazing.
It really is. She says, "The muffled tongue of Big Ben told 9. But on history's clock it was sunset, and the sun of the old world was setting in a dying blaze of splendor never to be seen again."
Wow. Sets the scene perfectly. So today we're doing a deep dive into Tuchman's book.
Exactly. This isn't just a timeline of events. Tuchman weaves together politics, military strategy, the personalities. It's about how Europe stumbled, really, into World War I in those first days of August 1914.
Right. We want to unpack the leadership, the massive miscalculations, and just the human side of it all.
Let's do it.
Okay, so this fading sun idea. Starting with Edward VII himself. He was known as the Uncle of Europe, wasn't he? Because of all the royal family ties.
Mm-hmm. And the book really emphasizes how his personal touch, his diplomacy, shifted Britain away from its old splendid isolation.
Towards alliances, or at least these, understandings with France and Russia. That was huge.
It completely changed the power dynamic. Tuchman talks about his visits to Paris, how he could charm the crowds, turn old hostility into warmth. They were shouting, "Vive notre roi! Long live our king!" for an English king.
Incredible. It shows how much those personal royal connections mattered back then.
Yeah, they were like serious diplomatic tools. It wasn't just about grand treaties, it was about relationships. Edward's funeral wasn't just sad, it was the end of an era, really.
And watching all this right there was Kaiser Wilhelm II, Edward's nephew.
Right. And Tuchman paints this picture of him feeling, well, complicated. Pride, sure, nostalgia maybe, but definitely seeing Edward as a rival.
You really get that sense of his own ambition for Germany, like he felt overshadowed.
Absolutely. Insecure, ambitious, kind of envious, needing recognition. His push for German power really reflected that rising nationalism across Europe.
It makes you think, doesn't it? How much do these personal feelings, these old rivalries between leaders, actually shape huge conflicts, even when things seem peaceful on the surface?
That's a key question the book raises. It's about leadership beyond just the political moves. What's the real legacy when personal feelings have global results?
Because beneath all the funeral pomp, the tensions were boiling.
Definitely. And Tuchman highlights the clashing views on war itself. You had people like Norman Angell writing The Great Illusion.
Yeah, arguing that war just wasn't profitable anymore, that it would wreck everyone involved because economies were so linked.
Exactly. A very rational argument against conflict.
But then you had the other side.
Right. The militarists like Germany's von Bernhardi, who were actively pushing for war, they saw it as essential for national power, almost like a cleansing force.
So these completely opposite ideas about war are colliding right as Europe is standing on the edge. Chilling, really.
It is. It shows that even logical arguments for peace can get drowned out by that drumbeat of militarism. A ticking clock, indeed.
Speaking of plans and ticking clocks, let's shift to the military strategies. Germany's big one. The Schlieffen Plan.
The master plan for a quick win against France. The core idea was this massive wheeling motion, swinging the German right wing through Belgium.
To get around France's border fortresses, right? Cut them off quickly.
Exactly. Go through neutral Belgium, despite the logistical nightmare of moving that many troops that fast.
But the guy in charge, Moltke, he seemed totally committed to it, almost rigid.
That's a huge point Tuchman makes, this rigidity in military planning. Moltke inherited the plan, and even when he had doubts or the Kaiser had last-minute hesitations, he felt locked in.
Which raises that question,
Well,
when does planning become a trap? How do leaders balance a set strategy with, well, reality? Human unpredictability.
it's a central theme. Moltke's inability or unwillingness to adapt really hampered Germany. Tuchman sees it as a critical failure.
And a huge part of that reality was Belgium. The Germans just assumed they'd let them pass through.
Pretty much. They underestimated Belgian resolve massively. Tuchman quotes someone saying, "Nobody believed in Belgium's neutrality. They figured economic pressure would be enough."
But Belgium's neutrality was guaranteed by treaty back in 1839, and King Albert, he didn't budge.
Nope. His response was crystal clear. Our answer must be no, whatever the consequences. Our duty is to defend our territorial integrity. Just like that.
Wow. That stand to galvanize the Belgians, didn't it? And it was the thing that pulled Britain in.
Absolutely. Sir Edward Grey, the British Foreign Secretary, called the invasion of Belgium the direst crime that ever stained the pages of history. It gave Britain its clear reason to declare war.
A moral justification where maybe there wasn't one before, or at least it wasn't as clear-cut.
Exactly. Meanwhile, you look at the French, still hurting from losing Alsace-Lorraine in the Franco-Prussian War.
Obsessed with getting it back.
And they bought into this idea of élan vital, this fighting spirit. Leaders like General Foch genuinely believed pure offensive spirit could win the day.
So their plan, Plan 17, was all about attack, 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 even though intelligence suggested Germany might sweep through Belgium.
Pretty much. They were so focused on reclaiming lost territory, it blinded them strategically. Tuchman really lays bare how that desire clouded their judgment.
Okay, so alliances are shifting, plans are rigid. Let's talk about the Allies getting ready and the logistical chaos. Britain, for instance.
Right. Britain had started doing some military reforms, planning to help France, especially after seeing Russia struggle against Japan in 1905.
But the government, the cabinet, they were really torn about actually committing troops, weren't they? Still thinking about the Boer War, maybe?
Very divided. Lots of anti-war feeling. And then you have Lord Kitchener appointed as Secretary of State for War.
Kitchener. He saw things differently.
He had this uncanny foresight. He predicted a long war. Famously said, "We must be prepared to put armies of millions in the field and maintain them for several years."
Millions. For years.
Yeah.
When everyone else thought it'd be over by Christmas.
Exactly. But his colleagues often thought he was being too negative, too alarmist, and his caution about sending all the troops at once created tension with the French, who wanted everything immediately.
Okay, now this next bit is wild. The German ships in the Mediterranean, the Goeben and the Breslau.
Oh yeah, the chase of the Goeben. It's like a thriller novel subplot, but with massive consequences. Admiral Suchan, the German commander, gets conflicting orders.
He makes his own call.
He does. Daringly decides to head for Constantinople, Turkey, basically to force Turkey into the war on Germany's side. Real decisiveness under pressure.
While the British Admiral, Milne, he was less decisive.
Much less. Tuchman portrays him as overly cautious, indecisive. He lets Suchan slip away. A huge mischance for the British Navy.
And this chase, this seemingly small naval event, it actually brings Turkey into the war.
Yes, against Russia. It completely changes the strategic map in the Mediterranean and the Middle East.
Yeah.
Just shows how one tactical situation can have enormous geopolitical ripples.
It really highlights how misjudgment or just a lack of nerve can have these devastating, unexpected results.
Totally. Whether it's overconfidence or not adapting. And that applies to Russia, too. Everyone talked about the Russian steamroller.
The idea that Russia had this massive, unstoppable army. Tuchman says, on the chessboard, Russia's size and weight of numbers represented the largest piece.
Right, that was the perception. But the reality, Tuchman digs into it, profound logistical problems, not enough railways, munition shortages.
And the leadership was lacking.
Terribly incompetent in many areas. General Sukhomlinov, the war minister, is painted as almost criminally negligent, totally out of touch.
So the steamroller wasn't quite ready to roll.
Not effectively. And you see the result at Tannenberg. A catastrophic defeat for the Russians. Total disorganization, huge losses.
And the human cost. General Samsonov's suicide after that defeat, it's just heartbreaking. The pressure must have been unbearable.
It underscores the immense weight on these commanders. And it really makes you ask, what lessons are there about leadership under extreme pressure? Russia talked a big game, but internally it was riddled with problems. Perceived strength isn't always real strength.
So as the Germans pushed on, the front line basically became Paris.
Yeah, the advance through Belgium was brutal. Tuchman details their reprisals against civilians, the burned towns. It shattered any romantic ideas about war.
She calls it the brutal reality of war that contrasts starkly with the romanticized notion.
Exactly. Civilian life just collapsed, people fled, adding to the chaos.
And the French army? They initially had this vague offensive plan.
Which quickly fell apart, but then they shifted to this fighting retreat. The order was drilled in. Fight and retreat, fight and retreat.
So it wasn't just a panicked run.
No, Tuchman describes it as surprisingly organized, considering. Exhausted, yes, but their spirit was galvanized by defending their homeland. They fought effective rearguard actions, even with refugees clogging the roads. Somehow, they held on.
And this is where General Gallieni steps up in Paris.
Gallieni. A key figure, maybe an unsung hero. Appointed military governor, he immediately saw Paris not just as a city to defend, but as a base to fight from.
Not a Troy holdup for siege, as Tuchman puts it.
Precisely. He fought the bureaucracy, got rid of incompetent people, and started preparing the city, fortifying it. He was blunt with the public about the danger, but rallied them.
Very different from Joffre, the overall commander, who initially seemed to dismiss Paris as just a location on the map.
A stark contrast. Gallieni understood the symbolic importance, the morale factor.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? About these individuals like Gallieni who fight the system, fight the inertia in a crisis. How much difference can one person make against the odds?
It's a powerful question about leadership and legacy. Gallieni kept pushing for troops for Paris. And then came the crucial intelligence.
About the German general, Kluck.
Yeah, General von Kluck. Intelligence showed he was pivoting away from Paris, turning east to try and envelop the retreating French army, instead of encircling the city as the original plan dictated.
He thought the French were beaten.
He was overconfident, yes, a massive miscalculation, and Gallieni saw the opening immediately.
This was the chance for a counterattack.
Exactly. Gallieni pushed hard. The French were exhausted, logistics were a mess, but his urgency, combined with Kluck's blunder, led to the decision. They even got the British eventually to agree to join in.
The British Expeditionary Force under Sir John French, who'd been quite reluctant to commit fully before that point.
Very reluctant. But Tuchman describes this incredibly moving scene where Joffre makes this impassioned plea to French, appealing for joint action, and French, moved to tears apparently, agrees. September 6th was set for the offensive.
The Battle of the Marne, the turning point. All thanks to Gallieni's persistence and Kluck's mistake.
A confluence of factors, absolutely. Tuchman just masterfully shows how these personalities, the rigid plans, the unexpected moments of courage or folly, all collided.
It's how Europe ended up in this devastating war that nobody really saw coming, at least not the way it unfolded.
Exactly. The Guns of August is such a powerful reminder that history isn't just about grand plans. It's about human beings, their egos, their fears, their misjudgments, their adaptability or lack thereof.
That sums it up incredibly well. Tuchman quotes Schlieffen himself, saying something like, "A battlefield victory doesn't mean much unless you break through or encircle the enemy."
Right. Though pushed back, the enemy will appear again. The campaign will go on. Chillingly prophetic for World War I.
It really makes you wonder, looking back at 1914 through this lens, what are those early signs, those subtle clues that a conflict is going to spiral out of control, become much longer, much bloodier than anyone expects?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
And thinking about everything we've discussed, the leadership challenges, the trap of overconfidence, the impact of people like Gallieni who defied the odds, what does this deep dive tell you, our listeners, about how history unfolds? And maybe how it remembers or forgets the people who shape it?